Hello, I'm Steve at Vintage Key Studio, and that was my impression of Serge Gainsbourg and Jane Birkin. Today we're going to be having a go on the Hammond M100. If you're avid viewers of this channel, you may already have seen a rather strange small video we did about a year ago just messing about with it, but I thought we should do a proper one detailing how it works and showing you a bit more about what I've done to it to really mess it up. This organ was made in 1967 and I bought it from a Liverpudlian. It's the same idea as the Hammond C3. It's got a tone wheel generator in it. There's lots and lots of tone wheels all going around all at once, and they're always making a sound inside, so there's always signal being generated, and whenever you press a note on here, it opens. It's like turning a tap on, so it opens all the. So whereas most other things sends an impulse to something to start up a sound, this is always going on. So this is the organ in itself. So we've got two microphones down here. I've got a couple of Octava MK012s. Just basically got one pointing at each speaker because there's two sets of speakers in this. Two main speakers, which gives a sort of a mono sound, a mono impression. And then you have the reverberation, reverb 1 and reverb 2 added to it. Now these organs were sort of special in the way that they had an amplifier channel for the organ sound, and there was a separate amplifier inside for the reverb, which is why it sounds quite nice, and there's no hum or anything. It's all very nicely sort of balanced inside. It's a lot simpler than a C3. Same idea. You've still got the drawbars here. And then on the left hand, the lower keyboard, again you've got, so the same idea, and then from all those tones you can make up different textures and timbres. So then you've got like the fundamental one, and then an octave above it, and an octave above that. So you can hear on there, there's actually a major triad playing all the time. You can just about hear in overtones. And obviously that helps you to shape the sounds. So you get in the right hand set of drawbars. For the upper drawbars, you've got I think the Je t'aime sound, which is also very similar to the whiter shade of pale sound, is something like that. You've got the pedal drawbar there as well. Variation on it. I meant to say there's a 16-foot pedal, not an 8. It's a 16-foot because it's a deeper sound. The pedals very straightforward. You've just got the pedal sound by itself, and then you've got pedal legato, which gives it a bit of a sustain, and then you've got fast decay, which doesn't seem to do a huge amount. That's normally, actually just turn off the reverb. Yeah, fast decay. So without the fast decay on, you've got that sound. And with the fast decay, it cuts it short. Bass mute always never seems to do what I think it does, and it seems to boost the bass, which I think sounds quite good, but it doesn't. It's like the opposite, bass mute. Unless it's like the cancel on the other organ, where to press it down it cancels the mute and makes it louder. I don't know, different. I was fixing this organ a while ago, and in all the schematic diagrams for these there are various different slight modifications and versions of different organ innards, and I had a problem with this where I was sort of playing the bass notes and it was coming out going wow when it shouldn't have been doing that, and I was trying to work out what it was, and I spent lots of money getting valves and replacing bits and pieces. In the end, what it was a hidden resistor that wasn't on any of the plans that for some reason someone had put in, and that one had gone bad, and it was giving a completely weird reading. I can't remember what it was, and it was making the whole thing just go wow, and I just clipped it. I remember clipping it with the clippers and then turning it on again, and it went back to normal. Very annoyed. So we've got the usual old stuff. You've got the percussion, second harmonic, and then you've got the third harmonic. So I just put on the lowest stop, and then the second harmonic, and then same with the bass. You've got a fast decay, or that's Peppa Pig, and then percussion soft. The bass pedals and the percussion are actually generated in the same part of the amp and the tone generator, so they've got similar controls. You've got vibrato on it. Oh no, there's nothing happening at the moment. Right, oh yes, on these ones you've got vibrato cancel, similar to the Hammond S6 where it's got the vibrato cancel. So without the cancel on, the vibrato works, and then you press it down to cancel it. When it's off, you've got vibrato, the small vibrato, sort of a chorusy sound, a chorus vibrato, a normal sort of vibrato there, and the Celeste ones, 1 and 2. And I find that if you press the small vibrato down, but then put it in between being on and off, it gives a completely new sound as well. Which is quite good. So it's like an extra sound that it doesn't tell you that's on there. It's like nom 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 nom. Right, this keyboard's had a few modifications to it. Oh, I should say this is a valve one. I haven't said that. It's all valve. I've put in a line out in the amplifier, which is basically what you do is you take the output wires that usually feed onto the speaker system. Two 16-ohm speakers wired in parallel will make the equivalent of an 8-ohm load for the amp. So that's what's in there, and what I've done is I've unplugged the two 16-ohm speakers, so there's an 8-ohm load that needs sort of something putting on there, otherwise the amp doesn't like it, and it will kind of mess the amp up. So what I've done is I've put a high watt resistor, one of the big ceramic ones, an 8-ohm resistor in the place of where the speakers are plugged in, and then out of there I've taken a couple of leads, and I can't remember what resistors they are, going into a jack output. So the amp still thinks there's a speaker connected to it, but the high level output that usually goes into the speaker is sort of like taken down a little bit by the resistor, so you can actually take it out of a line out. And I've put it in here, so it's coming out of the line out here. Now what I've done is I've got this lead coming out of here, going into a microphone splitter transformer box with Lundell transformers in, and I've actually got it plugged in back to front. So I've got the output of there going into the output of here, and then the input is actually the output, and that's going over there, and I'll show you in a minute where that's going. I did that because there was a bit of a ground loop in it, and it had a ground lift function on it, because it's going through transformers, so it kind of enables you to remove a bit like a DI box or something like that. So what we've got here is the output goes into here, out of here, and then it goes all the way over there. And what I've done, because it's now the output from the organ is just a regular sort of line level output, I've plugged it into the auxiliary in, or there's like a phono jack in on the C3 preamp. Obviously the C3 is switched on, and that's going through the Leslie. So what I have now done is managed to send the Hammond organ, the M100 organ, through the C3. So it's going through its own amp, through the C3, and into the Leslie. So I will just switch that over now. So you can hear that that's now coming out the Leslie. And I've also wired a sneaky Leslie switch, a remote one over here. So if I'll just switch it back again. So this is the sound coming out of the speakers built into the organ. And then switched over, it cuts the organ speakers out, because now that signal is now going through that 8 ohm resistor and then out through the output. Quite a sound coming out of there, and it may sound like it's about to blow up, but I've been doing it for a while and it hasn't yet. I've overhauled all the amps and everything, and they've all got new bits in. I've done it so you can put the organ through the Leslie without having to buy one of the costly little boxes that Leslie made to fit it to one. So basically I've made a kind of a conversion box thing in there, and the switch, which is really simple, an on-off-on switch, I think. So it will go through the Leslie, and you've also got the added bonus of quietened down output going into another preamp, which sort of adds colour. You might notice that the reverb isn't going through the Leslie. The way I've wired it up, it cuts the reverb off. Now, I probably shouldn't do this, but I'm now going to introduce another valve amp for some fun. So I just need to switch everything off and then switch it all back on again. So now what I've done is I've introduced an old Hammond A043 amp. This came from an L100 that I took to pieces, and I've converted this so it's actually, you can use it as a preamp or a mixer channel. I've been using it as a mixer channel. But what I've done is I've just plugged the output of the Hammond into the input of this L100 amp, and then the output of that is now going into the transformer box, and then out of the transformer box over into the C3 amp. So you've got 3 amps joined together, so it could all catch fire at any moment. But let's have a listen and see what it sounds like. I've also got a switch that I've put on here. There's a diode connected between, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think it's connected between these two output valves. There's a modification you can actually do on a Hammond L100 or L122 where you can give it a bit of an overdrivey sound. So that's what I've done on here, and it's not particularly effective because it cuts the volume right down. That's the overdrive on full, but it's more like underdrive. So it's just another fun effect that you can use on here. But I say I generally don't make a habit of plugging 3 very old 60s valves amps into each other in series. Let's take that out now, and then we take that out of there, put that back in there. Putting the Hammond through the C3 and then through the Leslie, obviously it gives you like a lot more scope for creating nicer tone colours, slightly more distorted but very nice sounding distortion. And you can get all kinds of different sort of weird, sort of lovely sounds like that. As well, you can also just sort of make it sound good. And then if you're fed up with that, you can flip it back and you can just play one thing I should say, a few years ago, well, I've had this for quite a few years now, I made an album about 2003 called Children's Television Themes from a Parallel Dimension. Link. I was a bit crazy at the time, and I did about 40 tracks in 1 month, and they're all pretend TV themes. I'm going to talk a bit more about that album in another video, because it featured a lovely little synthesizer box that I got called an MFB Lite, which I'll be talking about at some point. But I thought I should mention that I got some really nice effects from this, recording the Hammond organ at half speed. So what I used vari speed on a tape recorder that I had, basically slowed it down to half speed, and then played all these sort of like sounds. And it sounded something like this. My very first Hammond, I didn't have a Leslie speaker, but I bought another cheap Hammond that was a late 70s one. Wasn't very nice, but it had a Leslie speaker inside, and I cut that Hammond up with a tree saw and stuck it back together again, jammed all the wires back together, and it actually sounded not too bad. I used the Hammond amp to drive the speaker in the Leslie, so you could only have it going through the Leslie. But yeah, it was cut with this tree saw, and it took me about 3 weeks to cut it. We'd go and I nailed it together. Don't try any of this at home unless you know what you're doing. I've been through all of these amps and made them all safe. They're all earthed, because none of these were earthed when I first had them. They're all just like, you know, neutral and live. Death trap, all of them. So be careful out there. And I will see you all in the next video, hopefully next week. So take care. You might want to press the subscribe button, because it might make you feel better. I will leave you with this. Good night.